I'm not the one tracking them down for, like y'all said, $3,000. I'm not the one giving you an eviction. I'm not the one putting, lease violations on it. Our job is to retain residents. We want to keep them here. We keep them happy.
Maintenance starts out very low of the pipe's broken, the toilet's clogged, the thing's broken, and we're the ones that can show up and fix it.
Managers are the ones that get them in the apartments, and maintenance are the ones that keep them here.
No matter what your role is in the company, don't let anybody push you around, essentially. If you think something's important for the success of the property, stand up for yourself. And I would even tell people, forget the corporate chain of command. Go above the person. But a good maintenance technician is going to show up in that unit with a great smile on their face, an amazing personality, and you're going to walk out with that 5-star review, because that's our job on maintenance.
Yeah, tell our guys all the time, you guys are the face of these properties. Leasing teams and the office teams get them in the door, but you guys are the superheroes, the guys that show up with capes and fix the toilet or whatever's going on.
I would hire for personality and culture fit, not for skills. Those are the two things you can't teach. Anybody can learn a skill. When you're making those phone calls, no one's saying, well, thank you so much for reminding me that I owe you $3,000. Thank you so much for threatening to evict me, right?
Getting our property managers, our office leaders, our property leaders to ask and to ask first, what can we control? And then the empowerment comes of, okay, let's put resources to doing that before.
I'm super excited to kick things off with Sean. He's our special guest today. He's the CEO of AppWork. He will share how technology and gamification can boost morale and accountability for the site teams. It's something that we definitely need in today's environment. Sean and I are working on another project that it's actually meant to put a spotlight on, the hardest working people in the industry, which are maintenance professionals. So we're excited to share some news in the near future. Sean, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Adrian. I feel like soon you're going to have to drop the title of special guest, because I feel like I've been on here enough times that I'm no longer special.
You're not the special. Okay.
If it was my first time here, then I understand, okay, you bring on a special guest, but
it's a special, it's a special occasion. Like it's,
it's
a very important topic. Therefore, you're a special guest.
It's an important topic, and
yes,
it's one that I am passionate about, and I feel like every single person on this call is passionate about. And if you're not, then you're probably on the wrong call. One of the things that we lack, unfortunately, very much in is our industry. There's two components to our industry. There's the office staff and the maintenance staff. If you put that on a scale, it's just like, office staff is like, killing it, so to speak, in terms of recognition and morale and everything around that side of the industry. There's so many different ways to look at it. There's so many different components to it. For those of you that don't know me, for the last decade, I was running the operations at a nationwide property management company. Eventually that led us to building and spinning out a maintenance software called AppWork. But on the operations side, what we always found, well, first off, on an interaction level, the office teams typically have the more positive interactions with the residents. They're moving in, they're excited, they're renewing their lease, usually more exciting times, typically, I would say. Whereas typically maintenance is dealing with that more negative interaction. You're showing up when the resident's in a bad mood. They have issues. The residents typically see you walking around the property, not the office staff, right? Because typically maintenance is more accessible. And if they have an issue, they're going to pull you aside and they're going to, let's just say, speak a little bit more harshly to you. What we've seen within our own company, and obviously what we speak here now from clients is, a lot of clients are echoing that, where maintenance teams typically feel like they're more of the receiving end of the residents' frustration. Compared to the leasing side. So that's kind of like one thing that we had to, so to speak, silo, put that in a bucket for a minute, and we'll come back to that. But just keeping in mind that maintenance interactions with residents are typically more negative. And again, you guys can feel free to argue or disagree on any of these things. These are just based on my own personal experience and the experience of some of the clients that we're working with. Another thing is, obviously on a engagement level with the company, the leasing teams are typically sitting in front of an office in front of a computer. It's a lot easier for companies to include them in the company culture and morale, because you're having your Slack messages, your team messages, and they're all sitting there and they're able to interact. Somebody has a little win, they get a lease, everybody in the office can get up and give each other a high five and say, great job. With the maintenance team, it's very, very difficult to build morale culture with the maintenance team. Everybody's, they're spread out. They don't have easy access to whatever company communications you have, or even team communications within the property. Even that's difficult. Some properties are really good and they have their morning huddles and team meetings. That's one of the questions in just about every training that we do is we ask and say, everybody raise your hand. Who here has a morning huddle? And then all the regionals say, oh yeah, well, they're supposed to. And then, reality on site, we all know, right? Maybe people want to meet every day with their teams, but it doesn't happen that often. And I think those morning huddles happen to be incredibly important because that's really the real time that people have to build camaraderie and culture and all that kind of fun stuff with their maintenance teams. But anyways, that's another bucket that we can silo. So the team members, the maintenance team members are typically more negative. Their experience is more negative. It's very difficult to include them in the company culture. But the other thing that is more fundamental that I'm leading to here, when it comes to even managing your teams, I mean, on an operations level, you would ask me, my role as the SVP of operations, somebody would ask me and say, hey, Sean, how did their performance break down over the month? And I can tell you, well, their occupancy was XYZ. They had X number of move-ins, right? Which was, a conversion rate of X number of leases, which is a conversion rate of X number of tours, which was a conversion rate of X number of, I missed in there, the applications, which is a conversion rate of X number of tours, X number of calls, right? And I can even pinpoint that down to the leasing agent. Where this leasing agent got X number of phone calls. On the maintenance side, we're completely blind. You would ask me the same question on the maintenance team. It's how are they performing? I have no idea. With maintenance, nobody knows maintenance except for the maintenance team, right? So it's very difficult for a property manager. Typically in our industry, the property managers are responsible for the performance of the maintenance team. It's very difficult for them to get people engaged when they don't know anything. Right now, even I'm on the technology side, and the big thing that we have is how do non-technical, CEOs and people on our side engage software engineers. I have no idea what they do and how they do it. I don't know if they're doing a good job or a bad job, right? And I can tell you, there's hundreds of books. You guys can read it. There's hundreds of books out there that people have written on how to manage software engineers, because most people managing software engineers don't know how to write software, right? And I guess we have a very much smaller industry, so no one's really writing books about it. But we have the same problem. How do property managers manage maintenance people? They don't know what maintenance. They don't know how maintenance is. They don't know what the expectation. I mean, I myself have seen a maintenance person come into the office, saying that I just fixed this AC unit. Oh, I've been working on it for 3 hours, and the property manager says, "You're amazing. Thank you so much." And then he walks out and he laughed. He didn't know I was there, or he didn't know who I was, and he told the guy, he's like, "I was just in my car for the last hour watching a movie," uh, because the property manager had no idea what the expectation was. She didn't know what questions to ask to know how to gauge his performance. But anyways, all these things really came down to a big problem that I saw that we had is how do we get our teams to be engaged? How do we get our teams to be more motivated, right? From all these different reasons, from their experience is more negative, they're not included in the company culture morale. It's very difficult to manage people when you don't know what they're doing. We have no data behind them. We have no idea if they're doing a good job or not. And these are all problems that we've experienced as operators. And I think everybody here is more than welcome to agree or disagree, and I'd welcome that. I could talk about what we've built in AppWork, but I don't want this to become an AppWork conversation. My goal here is for this to be more in a realization of the importance of or bringing light to the focal point of this, of how do we get our maintenance teams to be more engaged? How do we get them to how can we actually hold them accountable for us that are managing maintenance team members, but even for us that are on the office side, right? How can our property manager be more educated to know how to set that expectation, right? How can I have proper data into my maintenance team so that I'm actually, when I say congratulations to somebody for being a top performer, I'm not congratulating the wrong person. And that happens all the time in our industry. We congratulate the person that's hanging around the office most, then maybe one or two residents made a good comment about him, and he's a well-spoken maintenance person, so he's the one that's getting all the credit. And the hard guys who are actually out in the field all day and working work orders and are not hanging around the office, they're the ones that get zero credit. That was another thing that we saw a lot. So I'd say my purpose today is more to bring light to it. Maybe we could even brainstorm together some ideas. I mean, obviously, I'm happy to tell everybody a little bit of the tools that we built. This is not, again, I don't want this to be a sales pitch for AppWork, but maybe even some of you guys can take ideas off of what we built and build your own thing, ways to track it, maybe using spreadsheets or other internal tools. Maybe next time, Adrian, I'll bring some of our clients to talk about the impact that this has had. And some of these, when you really focus on the data and on engaging your teams, and we use the term gamification a lot, how to really get your teams engaged and motivated. I'll stop talking. What does everybody think?
Paul, please.
Thanks for the rapid fire summary. I know talking to you before, that's situation normal. It's awesome. The point you brought up that the office culture is different than the maintenance culture. Office culture, leasing, our staffs are in an office. And because a lot of the communication and corporate culture is communicated digitally, trying to get that to include our maintenance teams asynchronously, meaning
Yep.
Our office team is there and can see their emails at their scheduled time. Something happens for maintenance and we're out of the office, we have to wait, or messaging or receiving those messages. To that end, which does tie into the point that you made of the office starts out at a high. They begin people looking for the service that the office is able to sell to them and problem solve there quickly. The flip side, I think, is that maintenance does start with the complaint. Something's broken, something's failed, something is problem. If we extend that time period out, I think the trajectory is the opposite for each department. Meaning the office starts out really high of, we sell you this great product, we sign the lease, you move in. From there, the only trajectory or direction they can do is down. They have a much greater opportunity for failure than they do even higher success. The flip side, though, maintenance starts out very low of the pipe's broken, the toilet's clogged, the thing's broken, and we're the ones that can show up and fix it. In other words, over a longer period of time, we win. If we're going to continue, which I think is a mistake, is the opposition us versus them mentality. But if we have to go with that, then over a long period of time, we win.
You're 100% right. And I think that's a great way of looking at it. And if you look over a period of time, the general interactions with the office, because the one thing that I also left out very often that the leasing team does do is also deal with delinquency. And I can, when you're making those phone calls, no one's saying, oh, thank you so much for reminding me that I owe you $3,000. Thank you so much for threatening to evict me, right? So look at it less over a period of time. Look at it less in an individual circumstance. The office team is sitting in the office, they're renting apartments. That's what they spend their time doing, right? They're doing tours, they're doing leases, they're doing applications. Typically, that experience that the office is typically handling, especially the leasing team, they're typically dealing with more positive interactions on a typical day. Whereas the maintenance team, they're typically dealing with residents, right? At the time of their interaction is typically going to be a more negative one. Now, your job on the maintenance side, and if you're good at your job, right, you'll be incredibly responsive. You're going to show up at the right time, and you're going to eventually build an incredible rapport, and they're going to like you very much, right? But a lot of times, unfortunately, on maintenance is number one, when they have the issue, they're going to stop you at the property, right? When you're walking around, you're driving the golf cart, doing grounds, you're doing whatever you're doing. Paul, what the hell, man? My AC's not working. You're like, all right, did you tell the office? Like, why are you telling me, right? But even then, a lot of it is also very much out of your control. Because if the property's understaffed, you're overwhelmed, it's the summer, there's a gazillion AC calls, there's nothing you can do, right? The residents are just going to look at you as the face of the property and just be frustrated that their AC is not working. There's obviously, yes, a lot that you could do to control, so to speak, your destiny and your fate and your relationship with your residents. But there is a lot that's just, when it comes to maintenance, that is out of your control. It's a general level of interaction. When I am interacting, I'm interacting typically at a more frustrating point for the resident, whereas the leasing team is typically interacting with a more positive point for the resident. I think that's the general consensus. And obviously, yes, a good person on maintenance is going to flip that around 100%.
The challenge, though, is the metrics for our industry is that short-term window that doesn't correlate with long-term metrics. So that results in a negative initial trend for maintenance. From an employee engagement standpoint, I almost think one of the solutions is following up on something you said of maintenance. It's out of their control. And kind of my pushback is, why is it out of our control when I think the beginning point of solving that engagement problem is getting our property managers, our office leaders, our property leaders to ask and to empower. Ask first, what can we control? And then the empowerment comes of, okay, let's put resources to doing that before it's on fire.
100%. And I think fundamentally, it's a problem in the industry. And the question is, how do we solve it? Yes, AppWorks is an amazing company, and we can give you some great tools, but the whole industry isn't signing up for AppWorks tomorrow. So what's the industry solution to solving these problems? Setting the expectation and trying to figure out, how do we handle that? And I'll tell you something that I tell people all the time. One of the small features that we have is in app work is the ability for residents to leave ratings and reviews on work orders. And maintenance technicians tell us all the time, that's not fair. Half the work orders, I'm going to get a negative review. It's not in my control. It's not my fault they're upset. It's not my fault that, the work order just assigned to me today, but it was submitted 4 months ago. And why should I get a 1-star review? But what I tell everybody is, you're right. And you're right to a certain degree, it is unfair. I'm not going to take that away from you. But a good maintenance technician is going to show up in that unit with a great smile on their face and amazing personality. And you're going to walk out with that 5-star review, because that's our job on maintenance. Our job on maintenance is not to just fix the issues. It's to keep the residents happy.
I'm going to push back a little bit on you,
Go.
Sean, of the job of maintenance is not just to fix things, it's to make people happy. That's what you said, right?
Oh no, I feel like I'm getting in trouble now.
And I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm going to say, if that's true, then why is the Maintenance Academy the only online source for soft skills training for our maintenance team personnel outside of turn the wrench, fix the toilet, fix the air conditioner, and that?
I think you're right. And again, I think that's part of the problem in the industry is that we don't focus enough on the soft skills. My statement will still stand. I'm not going to backtrack on that. I think the job of the maintenance team to not only fix things. Through fixing things, you want to keep your residents happy. That's the ultimate goal of everything that we do in our industry, is to retain residents, right? We want residents to be happy, to pay rent, stay there as long as possible, never move out. And to your point, I think you're right. And I think the industry needs a solution. We created this incredible program. It's 100% free for the entire industry. It's called the Maintenance Academy. And it's this library of hundreds of short form, easy to access clips, videos that anybody can go to and just watch and further educate themselves. There's a ton of videos on soft skills. That's a big focal point, but we're building now a pretty decent sized library of trade skills as well. Think of it the maintenance career path in our industry. People can advance in a career if they don't know how to diffuse a situation. Residents are coming up to them, yelling at them, and they don't know how to handle that. I think it's a big problem. And I wish more people were focused on it.
Sean, thank you so much for the entire expose. A lot to unpack here. I do want to go next to our first time guest. John, I'm going to start with you, sir. Tell us a few words about yourself, introduce yourself to the group, and then if you have a question or some thoughts about what was discussed so far, please share.
John Osgood, I'm a regional maintenance manager for Stratum Property Management. It's a new startup management company in Portland, Oregon area. What I see, or what I've heard so far, is that we lack operational soft skills training. And actually the training program that we're developing over here at Stratum is focused in 4 different areas. One's like core maintenance, one's specialty maintenance, one's safety and compliance, and then the fourth category that we're building in is operational and soft skills. And we have training tracks for the different levels of maintenance. And once they complete each training track, we're giving a raise incentive that correlates with each completion of a track. And it's to promote growth within our company and within our teams. And it's something that we're looking to do to develop our maintenance and create a good culture with our maintenance teams.
Thank you, John. It's great to have you here. Noah, welcome.
I'm Noah. I am the Director of Maintenance for Procurement and Risk Management for TM Associates. We manage a portfolio of about almost 18,000 apartments up and down the East Coast, all multifamily affordable apartments. We're working on a program to improve the hard skills for our maintenance first. We built out a program a few years ago that we call it's peer mentorship program. And one of the biggest parts, or one of the most common pieces of feedback that we got when we asked about the training process, was that there wasn't enough hands-on training. So I've been working with our training department to find a program where we can really better evaluate the skill level of our new maintenance staff when they're coming in, and then develop a track training plan that'll allow us to hopefully improve our maintenance retention and also, give our guys more ways to grow in the company. So I'm working on that. I got a demo actually coming up for our regionals soon. I pay a lot of attention to the interface between our maintenance and our managers. And one of the other, I definitely see the lack of soft skills on our maintenance side. But what I've also seen is the lack of understanding, like we mentioned earlier, of maintenance from the management side and from just the operations team in general. Most of our offices are really small. There are, maybe 2 people, a manager and a maintenance person, and something goes wrong. When somebody calls the office, the managers tend to have no idea what's going on or what they're talking about. So, I want to find ways to really get them all working a lot more together. my counterpart, our director of maintenance for the operations side of things, he's got a quote that I really latched onto. They told me his first day when he joined TM, which was, managers are the ones that get them in the apartments, and maintenance are the ones that keep them here. Just like you guys were saying, where yeah, it doesn't always start off great with the maintenance staff when you've got things wrong, but residents really seem to warm up a lot more to the maintenance staff, to the point where the managers are the ones that end up getting yelled at a lot more than the maintenance staff, because the managers hear, oh, well, why aren't you doing anything about this? And the maintenance guys get the, hey, well, thanks for finally coming in and taking care of this. So I've been telling our maintenance staff that for a few years, and try to push the customer service side of things. And I still see a lot of room for improvement.
You're right. And that's a very big thing that I think good maintenance teams can, and managers, when they work together, but the maintenance is not the bad guy, they're the good guy. I think the good teams can build that framing with their residents. But I also think some soft skill training can help empower them to do that. The Maintenance Academy is a group of industry experts that are just creating short form content to help other people within the industry. So if anybody here wants to join that and help create content for the Academy, that would mean a lot. And you can reach out to me directly after, and we can speak more about it.
Thank you, Sean. And my goal for 2025 was, we're going to use these meetings, the opportunity of us meeting every other week, to not just point at what the issues are within the industry, but we actually collectively have a lot of brain power, a lot of experience, hundreds of years of experience, if not thousands all combined. I like for us to also focus on solutions too, because if we just keep talking about, what are the challenges ahead without actually taking it to the next step, to where we come up with some practical solutions, I don't think that we're serving ourselves best. With that being said, Sean, I'd like to turn over to you and ask you a question. How does technology and gamification boost morale and accountability for technicians at the site level? And I want you to be as specific as you can, like, just share like some real life examples of how that happened, not just like, general with how the system works, but tell us some stories, share us some stories, because I know you have some.
We built a few gamification tools. One of them is really simple concept called a badge program. The purpose of the badge program was that clients can create essentially performance badges, all based on benchmarks that the client set. So I'm making it up. A client would create a badge, call it an HVAC superstar, and then they say somebody becomes an HVAC superstar when XYZ happens. It could be when somebody completes 50 HVAC work orders. You can even set a time limit within 30 days or something like that. Then what happens there is the system automatically tracks that. Every time a technician completes a work order, they get a pop-up, they can see their progress. Psychologically, it becomes very motivating for people, right? All of a sudden, my work is not just about task after task after task. There's a larger goal. It's like, hey, I want to become that. I want to become that. And it was funny because when we first built this feature, it was before we launched AppWork as a company. And I remember calling our director of maintenance, who oversaw maintenance for our entire portfolio, and he was an older gentleman, and his response was, Sean, you're out of your fucking mind if you think my guys are going to give a rat's ass about some stupid ass badges. And he was very frustrated that he's like, why is that like your focus at all? It wasn't a tense conversation at all. Let's just say that. But it was actually really, really enlightening to me when, he called me back about 2 weeks after we launched it. And he shared one story with me. The fact that he was calling me after that conversation, it was a phone call I never thought I'd get. But he said, Sean, he just got out of a training. He says, Sean, I just got out of the central shop, as we called it, and I got there a couple minutes late, and there were literally guys jumping on tables, everybody screaming at each other. It's like I calmed them down, and they were all comparing their progress on the badges. And he's like, I was like, well, why do you guys care about that stuff? And the guys just cared. He's like, it just meant something to them. The guys were really going crazy about it. I remember for me personally, I had a pet peeve of mine, and hopefully this doesn't offend anybody, but I never liked it when maintenance was hanging around the office. It was always a red flag, especially if somebody's there for an extended period of time. But I remember I was once doing a site visit, and I was in the manager's office talking to her, and there was a technician literally standing outside for like half the meeting, for like 30 minutes. It was this guy outside, and I was like, when I finished the meeting, I was so bad. I'm like, what are you doing here? And he's like, I need her to give me 3 more HVAC work orders. I'm like, what does that mean? He's like, I'm just shy of my badge and I got to get that badge. He's like, he had like a bet with somebody else. And I don't know, there was like a whole story there that I didn't really fully understand. As much as I wanted to be frustrated with him, for me, it was just like a good, pat on the back for my ego, because I was like, the maintenance director was like, you see, I wasn't so off there. But we have a lot of stories about the badges. We had a client told us that a maintenance supervisor called his regional at like 9 o'clock at night. And if anybody here is a regional maintenance supervisor, I'm sure you know that one of your guys are calling you at 9 p.m. and it usually only means one thing. And he's like, so he answers the phone. He's like, oh, what's the emergency? He's like, oh, nothing. I just want to request a title change. I'd like to be referred to as the guru from now on. Apparently, the client created a badge and they called it the Guru. And this person earned his badge, I guess, at 9 o'clock at night, and he felt it meant so much to him that he immediately called his regional. What we found is it's not just about performance and it's not just motivating. It actually, companies are creating an entire culture around that. And it's having a direct impact on the retention rates. A client actually told me that they had a technician that told them that he was offered like, I don't know, 50 cents an hour more somewhere more. And the technician asked them, do you guys use Appwork or like a tool to that, like a gamification tool? I don't know how he described it to this other company that he was interviewing with. And they said no. And he didn't take the job because of it. It meant so much for him to be able to be competitive with his team and be on top of things. Another tool that we have that we recently launched that's really getting a lot of attraction is a separate thing called coins. Badges are, somebody earns badge once a month, maybe a couple times a month they earn a badge and they hit a milestone. Coins are much more live in real time. Every time they complete a task, work order, make ready inspection, they get coins, 20 coins. They get positive reviews, they get bonus coins. Every month that they stay with the company, they get bonus coins. But the coins go both ways. You can earn coins, but you can also lose coins. If you get negative ratings, you lose coins. If you get callbacks, you lose coins. And in terms of like people caring about this and the level of engagement, I can tell you not once beforehand that we've ever gotten support tickets from technicians asking us to remove negative reviews. And like a week after we launched the coin process, we now get like a dozen of them a week where they're now like disputing almost every negative review that they get because they lose coins for that. We have companies that built their entire bonus structure simply around the coins. Tomorrow, actually, May 1st, we're announcing a pretty big partnership with Chadwell Supplies, where Chadwell Supplies is now giving out gifts to the top coin earners of Appwork every month. Or any of you guys can go to our website and see who are the top coin earners. And it's going to be this really neat way for people, existing clients and not just people, to see, like, it's going to be a really fun, competitive tool that people can see, how they're earning coins. And we had a different client when it came to coins, where they had to control somebody because he was like hogging all the work orders. He was a supervisor and he wouldn't assign them to his team because he wanted to get all those coins. But I told the client, I said, that's a good problem for you to have, versus, the other way where nobody wants to do any work. Yeah, so those are just some of the gamification tools, some of the stories that we've had.
Several years ago, I decided to start my own KPI system to recognize top performers and also to point out people that are kind of like the bottom of the list. They're not really doing well, with the goal of like acknowledging and giving shout outs to the ones that are great, and also hold those accountable, those that are not performing well. And actually just trying to understand. The company I worked for at the time, one of my first days in office, the first corporate meeting was ask around the regionals, hey, what's the extent of your problems with maintenance? And they're just saying it's a lot of work, but can you like give me some specifics, quantify? Not a single person in the room was able to tell me my property so-and-so has like 170 work orders, or like they only complete 3 work orders a day. There was no such a thing, even though that information was available in Yardi. Let's just say that we use Yardi at the time. So at that point, I said, like, this is, unacceptable. If you in management can make a decision based on any sort of metrics, like what you can measure, you can improve. We can't say we're going to do better
100%.
if we have no clue what we're doing, how good or how bad we're performing. So what I've done, I created something from scratch in like a very basic Excel spreadsheet where I started tracking every single property, every single day of the week, Monday to Friday. And I've done it, I used to do it twice on Friday, at opening at 9 o'clock in the morning and at closing at 6 o'clock in the evening. 3 months in, we got the work orders per property at closing on Friday. They were between 35 and 45 per property, right? Average. 3 months later, we got them down into like, 20s. 4 or 5 months later, we got them down into single digits, like literally single digits per property. We kept this record of single digits for 95 weeks in a row. Out of the 95 weeks, there were about 50 plus weeks that were during COVID, which you all know how challenging that period was. The particular situations that I have were like on a Friday evening, my phone will regularly ring, and one of the guys will just call to say, hey, I'm literally just heading to the office right now. I have a stack of work orders that I need to close. Would you please give me some extra time so I could close them? So don't check my number until then. Those were the guys that got like literally obsessed with closing on zero. I had properties guys that, teams that closed on zero for like 5, 6, 7 weeks in a row. And they were incredibly proud, like the pride that, this type of acknowledgement gave them. Because by the way, we were giving shout outs throughout the company, entry level employee of the company to the president of the company. Everybody knew how everybody performed, and to see your name constantly on a list of, there was nothing like it. We live in a times where like vanity metrics count, everybody's chasing the likes, the views, all those metrics on social media. But then this is real stuff. These metrics that we're talking about right here, they're real metrics that actually measure work, very hard work that's being done. I think this is an amazing tool to, just kind of improve your retention, to reduce burnout and everything, just the shout outs.
You hit it spot on. And, it's a quote that I actually thought came from Tony Sousa, but I tracked it down. It actually came from Moshe Crane. Bowling isn't fun if you don't know the score. And it's as simple as that. It's such a good quote because it's so true. And that's really what, the way I look at things like this is it's something that it's, work orders. It could be like bowling. We all think of it as just repetitive, boring work, right? But it could be super fun if we just had a score and all of a sudden people know their score. And it's like, hey, did I win? Did I lose? How am I? How do I compare? And it's something that anything can really be fun. I think you hit it spot on, Adrian. I think there's so many ways. Yes, there's technology that people can use to track the score. But I think, you guys can get creative. If you don't have the technology, get creative. And there are ways that you can do it manually. If you guys want, Adrian, if you want me to share my screen, I'm happy to share like a cool leaderboard that we have inside of AppWork. And you guys can, almost, try to copy or mimic some of the data if you can pull some of that from your PMS.
Absolutely. Go ahead. I just enabled that option for you to share the screen. Go ahead and share the screen with everyone.
Here, I'll show you what we have here. There we go. So this is just one of the pages inside of the system. This is what we call our technicians page. And here I have a list of all my technicians, and I can see a nice little picture of them. That will be hard if you don't have technology to do that, but you can see their average completion time, their title, their name, the property that they're by, how long they've been with the company for, their average rating, how many reviews they've gotten, how many coins they have, how many work orders they've completed, how many callbacks they got, how many work orders they withdrew from, and how many work orders are currently assigned. So a ton of data. And I could just go right here and click completed, and it'll give me my leaderboard, my first, second, third place winners of who completed the most work orders. See different group of people here for second, right? But to be able to try, this is not rocket science. This is not crazy data. I mean, even if you don't have the ability to collect maintenance ratings and reviews, I'm sure you guys have the ability of knowing who completed work orders, maybe tracking callbacks, tracking average completion time, and even something that is very important that people don't realize, even just tracking how long they've been with the company for. Because if you're comparing two people's performance, right, and one person just started versus somebody who's been there for a long time, obviously it's going to be different. So just some of this data could be very helpful and insightful for you guys. If you look at it this way, you can actually see how many badges they've earned each month. So if I want to see who earned the most badges in this company this month, it's this fellow here earned the most badges. You can see who got the most callbacks this month. About 20 times. This gentleman got the most callbacks. Right. So you have this easy way of just viewing the data. So there's a lot of neat things that you guys can do. Obviously, again, some of these things are going to be harder with the system like Smartsheets or spreadsheets, but there's a lot that you could do on a very basic level that can really just give you insights and give you the score. And then obviously your job is there to take the score and, pass that down to the rest of your team so that everybody knows the score.
That's very helpful, Sean. I will also want to give a couple of others that are joining us on a call today to kind of share some thoughts on what we have talked about so far. Big Dog, we love to hear, one of the purposes of, creating the Leadership Council was to give a voice to those that aren't in a regional position yet, but I could see becoming that person soon enough, right? They're like a few inches close. We try to help them get closer to that goal, and you're one of them, right? You're site level, but you're doing a great job at the site. Some of us, haven't been at the site in a long time. We're not going often. Me personally, I haven't been like hands-on involved in operations in maybe there's a few years now, I had to admit. So we'd like to hear the voice of someone that works at the site. Please share some thoughts on what we have covered so far today.
For me personally, I've always had the kind of the opposite experience. I'm the guy that people are happy to see show up, and it's usually the office getting the brunt. Now, unless I make a mistake, then I'm the bad guy. But Very rarely do I get the brunt end of it. I show up, I'm smiling, I got my big old cowboy hat. People are happy to see me. I'm happy to be there. I joke around. I explain how call outs work to people and always tell them, you can call me out at 3 in the morning if you get clogged out toilet, but I'm gonna come. I ain't gonna be happy about it, but I will come. And you develop a rapport with these people and you build a relationship. You joke around. I've played therapist. I've played all this stuff. I wear a lot of different hats, not just this one. But the soft skill set is probably one of the most valuable tools I've had in my tool bag. I got involved with my local association very early on in my career, and it kind of skyrocketed me to be able to kind of be a little bit more eloquent the way I talk. I came from the oil field, so the term curse like a sailor applied to me a lot. That was something that I had to cut off very quickly, and sometimes I still catch myself. But one of the soft skills, it's invaluable. It makes a difference between somebody you want when corporate's around or somebody you hide when corporate's around. I have a guy, great guy. Can't complain about him too much, but I tell him like when corporate's here, you get in that make ready and please stay right there and don't talk unless spoken to. Can't control his mouth at all. I do feel like the office gets a little bit more of the brunt because I'm not the one tracking them down for, like y'all said, $3,000. I'm not the one giving you an eviction. I'm not the one putting lease violations on it. Not unless we make a mistake. Our job is to retain residents. We want to keep them here. We keep them happy. So most of my experiences and most of the people that I've dealt with over the years, I've had a lot of people I've trained, and I've kind of been able to instill that kind of attitude into most people. But at the end of the day, you're gonna notice that there's a stark difference in people who are trainable and people who, God, I hate to say it, but not everybody is going to be trainable for that set of soft skills. And some people are stuck in that ways. I've had some technicians who have had absolutely no interest in becoming more than just a technician that the where they're at. A sad reality is you just have to accept that some people are not going to be able to taught to react the way that we need them to. That doesn't mean they're not capable of doing the job. They're just not going to be capable of doing the job as well as you would like or well as corporate would like. You have to find the correct person to be trainable for that kind of that skill set.
I appreciate it. Very deep thoughts, by the way. Kyle, you're up next, sir. What's on your mind?
I almost love the guys who are they can just fix stuff. Those are my favorite guys, honestly. They need to be able to talk to people. They need to be able to not cuss and carry on a good conversation, have the smiles and all that stuff. And that's just not the reality of all guys. But the culture between the office and maintenance really starts with the hiring process a lot of the time and who's going to work well together. They have to, Sean spoke to morning huddles. That has to be a thing, I think. Okay, what's the goals today? What are we getting done? And then in the afternoon at 4 o'clock or 4:30, it's like, okay, what did we get done today? How did it go? I didn't get to this. I'll get that tomorrow. They have to develop that relationship. That's going to be difficult and it's going to take time. Some properties it's going to be easy for, and some properties it's going to take some time and it's going to take those guys working together to get there. But I think that trying to get the office teams out with our guys just to hold the flashlight. I mean, or just to understand what it takes to replace that AC or it's like I get calls on occasions like, what's taking him so long? And it's like, well, maybe this is an older property. So it's like, yeah, it shouldn't take long to pull a toilet and replace the toilet if it's a new property, that the flange is fine. You're not busting up floors. You're not doing those things, but it's like, it took you 2 hours to replace the toilet. It's like, okay, well, this is what I ran into. And if you can bring office teams with you, invite them out for that. Yeah, cross training is huge. The office staff enjoy that a little bit. They all own their own homes, or they're going to hopefully one day or whatever. They want to know what we do. We don't always translate very well back in the office. I've had maintenance guys like, yeah, let me go answer the phone for the day. That hasn't always worked out the best, but I think it really starts with that kind of stuff. And I think that if the office is doing that or they have that relationship, even if it's just morning and afternoon meetings, it's just like the recognition comes from that. They're like, man, I see what you were into. Sorry you had to go through that, whatever. I think that kind of culture goes a long way and provides a camaraderie that you just can't really teach, or you just can't say, okay, you're going to go work together. Good luck. It's just, that's hard. It just it takes time, and we don't always have time. And the only other thing I'll say is being transparent about everything financially, leasing processes. Be transparent, give them ownership of the property, give them expectations on how they want the property to run, and Let them do it. We hire the smart people to tell us what to do, not so that, we can tell them what to do or whatever, however that goes. So yeah, I tell our guys all the time, you guys are the face of these properties. The leasing teams and the office teams get them in the door, but you guys are the superheroes, the guys that show up with the capes and fix the toilet or whatever's going on. And they're ultimately the reason we get those renewals. So I don't know, having those conversations, those crucial conversations, and constantly training and working towards that is just, I don't know. I guess that's all I got to say, but it's a tough thing to do consistently for sure.
A few really, really good points that I want to touch on. I mean, number one is to what you said, where it starts from the hiring process. I think it's so true. And I mean, I'll tell you a model that I live by, and nobody should learn from me. I would hire for personality and culture fit, not for skills. Those are the two things you can't teach. Anybody can learn a skill. Now, unfortunately, with maintenance, you're typically hiring somebody because you have an urgent need for an HVAC superstar. So you got to find somebody who knows HVAC really well. You can't find somebody that knows nothing and just has a good personality. But if you do have the opportunity to hire that way, I think that's the way people should be. Our property managers typically are obviously leading the charge on the interviewing process. Should be interviewing. Right, they should be interviewing who's going to be a good culture fit, who am I going to work well with, who has a good personality, who's going to get along with the team. Everything else, in my opinion, could be trained. You can't teach personality, and that. So that was a really good point that you mentioned, an important point that I think we often, especially on maintenance, I think we overlook because of the urgency typically surrounding maintenance hires. Another thing that you also mentioned about the ownership, I used to personally do an orientation individually with every single person that started within our company, from a maintenance technician, property managers, all the way up to regional managers. I would meet them for about 30 minutes to an hour, depending on their role, and just welcome them to the company. And the biggest thing that I always tried getting across is you own your property. And everybody says that every comment, oh, we want you to act like an owner, right? All that, it's right. And because that is the mentality that we want everybody to have. But the way I would tell people to, so to speak, really, if you own the property, you see something that needs to get done on your property, and you go to your property manager and your property manager says, no, I don't think it's necessary. We're not going to do it. If I was the owner of the property, but I'd say, excuse me, no, I'm telling you that this is important for the success of the property. You're going to do it, right? So obviously people have to be respectful, but I would always tell my teams, don't let anybody tell you no. If you think something's important, speak up, right? And obviously you have to know when to stop. You have to know when, okay, no, when a real no is a real no. But, and I use this myself in my career. I used to work very closely with our CEO in the company. I was the ideas guy. I was that guy who was always thinking out of the box, and very constantly I was told no. And my philosophy was, if I was told no, it means that, I didn't do a good job explaining the why behind my thought process. Right. So for example, like maintenance technicians, very easy to say, oh yeah, we need more dog waste stations. But if you could say, if you give the explanations like, hey, we got 7 complaints, right, in the last week of residents that stepped in dog poop, right? And people are asking us for waste stations, and the waste stations that we have are on the opposite side of the property compared to where the dog owners are, right? Meaning if you just explain yourself, right, very often the answers will be very different because of maybe personality, and people don't know how to express themselves. They don't know how to ask for things. So they say, oh, we need more waste stations, waste bins, and sorry, it's not in the budget. The answer is no, right? But if you would say, 1 second, he said no, then I didn't do a good job explaining. So let me go reframe and go back to him and say, well, here's why we need it. We want you to push back. I don't want a yes man. I want somebody that's going to come there, because everybody in the company also has a different vantage point of viewing the property, right? A maintenance person sees things in a very different light than the property manager will. The regional sees things in a very different light than the property manager, right? Everybody sees things in a very different light. You see it differently than I do. No matter what your role is in the company, don't let anybody push you around, essentially. If you think something's important for the success of the property, stand up for yourself. And I would even tell people, forget the corporate chain of command. Go above the person. So if the property manager is not listening, and she kept saying no, and you think something's really important for the success of the asset, go to your regional manager. I said, we're never going to fire somebody for doing what they thought was best for the property.
Lots of great things to process, Sean, right there. I want to make a couple of announcements before we wrap up. But Ed, if you're in a position to turn the camera on and share some thoughts about what we discussed, I'd love to have you. If not, no worries about it. But while you're prepping to answer that, Paul Rusk has something amazing prepped. On Friday, he's gonna have a session at Apartmentalize on the week of Apartmentalize on Friday. If you're around, try to attend. I know it's gonna be amazing. It's like Paul's sessions always are. If you have suggestions to topics for us to discuss, I have a ton of topics, but this is not about me, right? I could always come up with topics. I love to see what you're encountering right there, what you're up against, so we could bring those to the group, My intention, like I said, because want to be solution based in 2025, is to find people that solve those solutions on a daily basis, right? So, for example, let's just say that mold is an issue. It's an issue for everyone. You don't remediate mold on a daily basis, but the mold remediation companies do that on a daily basis. So we will bring an expert in mold remediation to help us understand. This is just an example. It doesn't mean that that's gonna be the topic, but for each topic that you'll bring up and we decide to discuss on the next meeting, I'll try to find a relevant expert in that on that particular topic to help us. It's very easy for us to point at things that are challenges, but if we're not also bringing solutions, we're not advancing our cause. And for me, like, this is very important for us as a group, for us as individuals to grow, and also for the industry as a whole. I look at this group as being like a driving force for everything that's happening on a facility side. We have 160 plus members, and the number is growing. My goal is to be 500 by the end of the year. By the way, if you have friends or peers of yours, please share the information with me. We're gonna add them to the call list. I want for this to become a really big thing. We have an opportunity. And the last announcement that I have, Fix It conference between May 19 and 21st. I sent some emails as well. It's going to be near Portland, Oregon. If you could make it, there's still, a few seats available. They're about to be like booked, but I'd love to meet you there in person. I'm advising for the summit. They were kind to, invite me and to be part of the event. I think it's going to be amazing. It's kind of unprecedented, the first one of this kind, just for maintenance, just for facilities professional. I encourage all of you, if you could, make it happen, that'd be amazing. With that being said, that's all the time we have left for today. We're about 5 minutes over. Thank you all so very much, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Don't forget to send me, our favorite topics via email. Take care, y'all.